in this session. This is our roundtable discussion, and we decided this year to include these so that we could glean wisdom from the speakers that are here, practical questions that people have, get 3 different men to discuss those things. As you can see, this room is packed because you care about this subject, and it's on building a devotional life, and we're looking forward to the answers that these men are going to give. It's not going to be an open forum where the audience is going to ask questions as much as we've got some questions already submitted, and I will ask them, and all 3 of these men will speak on these questions, and then the session will be yours. It's on building a devotional life, and there'll be questions about their personal lives and how they've done that, but also advice for how we can do that as well. 3 men that we're blessed to hear from today. Bart Warren, he's the preacher for the South Green Church of Christ in Glasgow. Bill Burke preaches in Dallas, and Melvin Otay preaches in Montgomery, Alabama. And these men all love the Lord, family men with children that love Jesus Christ, and we're grateful that they are here and also grateful for your presence. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the questions, and we'll just see how far we get. So this first one, Bill, I'll start with you. What would you say are the keys to building a devotional life? What are some of the keys to building and maintaining a healthy devotional life?
I am a color good material, not color C-O-L-O-R, but C-U-L-L-E-R. And so probably a lot of you have heard something similar to this. It's not original with me, but the more I thought about the keys to devotional life, the first one is say something to God every single day. In other words, strive for a prayer life that's rich and intimate. Begin your day with prayer. Pray to God throughout the day. Thank Him for every blessing, both small and great, and share your day with Him in that regard. Second, let God say something to you every day. Spend some time in His Word. It doesn't have to be hours. Just a few minutes every day is a great start. And if you're struggling, it's certainly better than nothing at all. You can listen to the Bible as you drive down the road. You can listen to preaching. There's so many avenues that weren't available even 30 years ago that are available today, where if you want to be nourished by God's Word, that opportunity avails you. And then thirdly, say something to God, or say something about God to others every day. That can be evangelism. That can be talking to your spouse about your blessings. That can be discussing what's going on in your local congregation with a neighbor or a friend. The idea for a rich, vibrant devotional life, at least in my opinion, is we keep God front and center all day long. We invite Him into our day, and like we would with a good friend, we enjoy His companionship and we seek His face.
Bart? I would just continue with that line of thought, but as we're thinking about thinking of the Lord and praying to Him and hearing from Him, I think one of the first things I wrote down when I was thinking about this was we have to keep the goal in mind, that our devotional time should be about drawing close to the Lord. A trap would be turning that into something that's merely academic and an exercise. Just it's great the way these things work out. Just this last week, as I was thinking about this forum, just this last week, our kids are reading the Screwtape Letters from C.S. Lewis, and one of the letters, Lewis, as he's speaking as a demon to keep the people from being faithful, he says, turn their devotional life into an academic exercise. That will keep them from being the kind of devoted people they should be. And as I was thinking about that, as I thought, okay, so when I go to Scripture, when I'm hearing from God each day, when I'm doing these things, this should be a time that I'm seeking to be closer to Him, to Jesus, not just the historical Jesus that others have written about and talked about, someone that spoke a different language from far away, but my Jesus who knows me and loves me, and I'm seeking to know and to love. And so keep that goal in mind, that whenever you're talking to God and hearing from God and telling others about God, as Bill said, when you're in this personal time of devotion, you're trying to be closer to the Lord. And so keep that goal, number one, I would say, because there's so many things that we can be doing that look religious, but it's not a time of devotional. And so we want to make sure that's what we're doing. The second thing I would say is this, is that we need to utilize the right type of tools, because there's so many things out there that, like Philippians chapter 4, verse 8, when we're to fill our minds with the things that are true, noble, and good. There's a lot of things out there that are couched in spiritual terms, religious terms, but they're going to do the opposite of what you want them to do. It's a devotional time to draw closer to the Lord. And as Bill mentioned, man, there's so much stuff out there. You can drown in it sometimes. But one of the great things about being a part of a local body, talk to your elders, talk to fellow Christians. He said he culls good material. Cull out the weeds, cull out the garbage, the stuff you don't need to listen to, don't need to read. And so those are the two things I would say before I turn it over to Melvin, is that remember what the goal is. The goal is, in devotional time, is drawing closer to the Lord, and use the right type of pure materials that will help you do that. Obviously, that's the Word of God. But there's a lot of helps and aids out there that do the opposite of helping.
Yeah, I think both of these men have said some really good things. The first thing that occurs to me is actually what Bart just said, which is remembering what devotion is actually all about. You know, as I've thought about it over the last week or two, I looked to just kind of see what people said about devotion, religious devotion online. And I thought about it, this is how I hear people use it too. I mean, people use that word in different ways. Like sometimes people say, have a devotional. And what do they mean? They really just mean kind of go through some abbreviated religious acts. That's usually the way people use it. We're going to have a really brief period of 10 or 15 minutes to just kind of jam some religious stuff in. And I suppose that's fine, but that's not the way I think of it. I think of it as dedication and intimacy with God, and how do I achieve that in my personal life. I can't really do that for a big group of people, but I'm thinking about what I need to do to increase my intimacy with God. And if that's what you're trying to do, I think Bill is right. There's a couple of key things you got to make sure that you do on a daily basis. And I kind of take this from Acts 2. You know, in Acts 2:42 it says they devoted themselves to the apostles' doctrine, fellowship, breaking bread, and prayer. These are things that the first Christians were doing on a continual basis outside of like these large assemblies, right? So outside of Wednesday night Bible class, you should do that. Outside of Sunday services, you should do that. But if you do that, and that's going to be the core of your intimacy with God, you're going to find yourself feeling a little distant from God at some point. It's going to become stagnant at some point. But the idea of being devoted to the apostles' doctrine every day, being in God's word, being devoted to prayer, listening to what God has to say, fellowship, that's spending time with other believers. That's actually part of me being close with God, is spending time with other believers. And you know, the breaking of bread, I understand that to be a reference to communion, you know, remembering Christ there in that passage every day, you know, reflecting on the cross and what God has done. I mean, those are some really basic things to me that if you make that a part of your day, you don't wake up and then go to sleep at the end of a day without doing each of those four things. You personally, privately, that's going to be, to me, these are key basic things that will help you be close to God, grow closer to God.
Thank y'all for that. So this idea of getting close to God, making sure we say something about God, to God every day, remember the goal and why we're doing this, and it's very personal. Melvin, you mentioned this idea of we can do devotionals with the group and study congregationally, but this is something that we want to do as individuals. I'll start with you on this next question. There are people of different ages and life stages in this room, but how can, and we can of course go around from here, but how can families get together and have devotional time together in a way that's natural and sustainable? And when I say families, I'm thinking of people in different life stages. So empty nesters potentially, as well as people that have small children, or maybe a grandparent has their grandchildren over and they want to try to be a spiritual influence. And you all have children of different ages, but just what are some things that have worked for you all as far as having a family devotional life that's natural and sustainable, which is going to be different for everybody, but that's why we got 3 people up here.
Well, my boys now are 19 and 16. So things kind of look different, I suppose, at different stages. You know, when you got little kids, now it's like if we can just get these guys to be home for dinner, it's nice. But what we started doing with them when they were pretty young was during like the dinner hour, that's our family devotional time. You know, we all are going to strive to be home at the dinner hour. I'm usually going to be out doing stuff. I make it my business to be home for dinner. And during that time, you know, when they were younger, we might talk about basic Bible stuff, or we might read passage in the Bible and talk about that. But as they got older, and not a lot older, you know, maybe they were 8 and 10, I started kind of transitioning responsibility for that time over to them. So they became responsible for thinking through something, preparing something, leading our discussion. So this is what we do during our dinner time. We talk about the Bible, we talk about biblical texts, we watch good materials. All this stuff is available online. There's a lot of good stuff in the Brotherhood. We'll watch that during our dinner time and talk about that. And over time, you know, we have to kind of change and do different things because it'll stagnate, right? But for us, that's dependable time that we can get everybody together, and it doesn't require anything extra of us, right? It doesn't require us to sort of find time during the day. This is time we already have. And I think it's important, it'd be important to me if I had girls, but I have 2 boys, and I want them to be in the habit of leading their family in devotional time, right? So this is something that I've sort of been training them to do since they were young, and now they're responsible for it. So as far as just the time part for us, that's the way we do it, and that's been pretty dependable. Now that they're older, one of my boys lives on campus, the other one's leaving next year to move up on campus. I think we'll, I know some people who use like technology, Zoom and all this kind of stuff when they're at distance. We'll have to try to do some of that stuff, because even when they're gone, I want us to kind of keep some of that. We may not do it every day, you know, but maybe once a week or twice a week. When they have kids, I still want to be able to do that. You can move wherever you want. Get my kids on here and let's have an hour of everybody talking about the Bible together. Yeah.
Bill?
I have 3 children. I have a daughter who's out of the house. I have 11-year-old twins who are autistic, so it's a little bit different in how we go about our devotionals. What we tend to do is prioritize regular moments of prayer. For instance, every meal we try to pray, and not just pray, but then talk about where our food comes from and how blessed we are to live in a land where we have plenty when people in other places don't. We try to turn, we're going to eat every day. You can tell that by my midsection. And we're going to do it more than once. So there's an opportunity to pray and talk about spiritual things. We're very diligent about that. And also, anytime we get in the car and leave, we pray with the girls. We pray about, where we're going, safe trip, those kinds of things. And also, we have tried to install in them this love of worship and church. And my kids look so forward to going to Bible class and worship, and they start talking about it on Monday, after Sunday's over with. So my situation's a little bit different because of my kids' particular circumstances. But it all boils down to trying to tie in spirituality to those daily events, the things that we know we're going to do. And if we can anchor our spiritual disciplines with those normal activities, we'll find that we spend a lot more time talking to our kids about God and engaging in exercises like prayer.
Sure. Mark?
I'll just add to what these guys have already said. I mean, obviously prioritizing time together, the dinner table, whatever it might be. I love the way Melvin said it. Basically, you're going to eat anyway. You might as well utilize that time in the greatest kind of way. But something that I wanted to add to this was sort of, it's based on the Deuteronomy chapter 6 type idea of, when you get up in the morning, when you go to bed at night, when you're walking by the way. instill the commands, the law of God in the hearts of your children. So one of the things I've tried to do, I mentioned a minute ago, reading Screw Tape Letters, because that's what they're reading. I've tried to read all the literature books they read, as they read them. Well, most of the time for me, it's listening to them in the car as I'm driving, so they have to actually read it and I listen to it. But the point is, I read what they read, and then we make spiritual application. And so if they've read Frankenstein or Pride and Prejudice or whatever it might be, I read these things too, and then we say, when this character did this, what's the biblical application? What's the spiritual application? Because they were reading that for their literature class anyway, and so we're trying to turn that into something where we learn biblical principles about humanity, who God is, who God made us to be. And I think that's an effective way to cement what they're learning, but also to put a eternal spin on it, where they're thinking through and approaching everything from an eternal perspective, filtering out the lies and honing in on the truth. And that's been an approach that's been fun for me, and I pray has been beneficial to them. But something that when Melvin was talking a moment ago about letting his young men transition to a point of leadership, I just want to share that something that was incredible to me is that I think if you instill these things in them, you're going to see incredible results, and sometimes in shocking ways. For a while, our practice, from the time they were little bitty, having time of prayer, talking about the day, putting them to bed. But then I noticed as I was putting the boys to bed and I would leave, that I would still hear noise upstairs. And I thought it was just little boys being little boys. Come to find out, our twins, who are the older of the two, were getting up after I had tucked them into bed, after Laura and I had put them to bed. And we're going into different rooms and we're having personal times of just reading the Bible alone. And first time that I saw one of our sons doing that, I kind of lost it. Couldn't believe it. I could believe it, but it was just amazed and thankful. And so they were having times of personal, private time of reading Scripture to grow, to learn, to have a time of where they've already had all the other things with other people, and now it's just them and the Lord before they go to sleep. And that's a practice they've continued, and that's not because I did anything great, because my wife is great and the Lord is great, and it's a special thing to see that. And if you show them that everything about life is because of being seen in the light of heaven, that'll make a difference.
Yeah, I think a lot of what y'all said was helpful. Interesting thing, nobody mentioned any curriculum or one size fits all, because people's lives are different. And when we talk about devotional life, we need to keep that flexibility in mind. A lot of what was said was natural. And I think that's what God's driving at in Deuteronomy 6. When you're walking by the way, when you're talking, when you're lying down, don't make God and religious things, spiritual things, something you turn on. It's just we're doing life together as a family. And Bill, you said something I thought was helpful, coming from worship and church and discussing the sermons. Sometimes we can talk about devotional life like we're going to do the church and then we're going to do our personal thing, but we can capitalize and build on what the local congregation is doing and use that as a springboard to do what we're doing. A lot of what was said was about flexibility, creativity, using literature and books, and just doing life together. And so I think that's helpful for all of us, and just realizing it's going to be different in your family. The goal is to do it, to make conversations about God, prayer, and spiritual things a part of who we are and what we do. And remember, the goal is to draw us near to God. Bart, I'm going to start with you on this one. We all know we need to be doing this. The Bible tells us in places like Psalm 1 and verse 2, meditate in the law of God day and night. We know the goal and we want to do this. What tips or advice do you have? And then we can just, again, go around from there. But for people trying to do this that are just in a busy stage of life, you've got work, you've got family, different things happen. What are some helpful tips for building a devotional life when life is busy? As preachers, sometimes we've got a study to go to. We can get away from people and we get paid to study the Bible full time. But what about people juggling jobs and children and just different things like that? How can you be consistent even in busy times?
Okay. First of all, that's a great question because I think that's probably the reason why so many are in this room right now. Is like, that's the question I want the answer to, is how do I fit that in this hectic, crazy life that we have? And just first of all, just speaking as a preacher, obviously I know that alienates a bunch of you in here. There's a lot of you that it does fit, but it alienates a lot. But speaking as a preacher, I see in my life that over and over again, it's prepare the next lesson. You know, the church is going to have this, and then there's this conference, and then there's this, and this, and this, and this. And I have to be reminded that I need personal time to just be fed alone, to draw nearer to the Lord by myself. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, Hiram, is that in my hectic schedule, I have to be reminded, first of all, that I need to be fed. And then when I see the difference it makes, then I go back to it again. I know that it's necessary. So that's the first thing that I would say, is that try it. Cut other things out, make it a priority, and when you see in your life the difference it makes, you'll go back to it again, and you'll make sure that you do it again, and you make it a part of things, that you will cut some of the hectic things somewhere, somehow. Because once you see how effective, how life-giving, life-infusing it is to have devotional time, you will make it a priority. So now, that's a super general answer, right? So now something specific, maybe. I think utilize a plan. So if you say, here's the passages I'm going to read this week, and you have a plan of what you're going to look for, that can be very helpful. Instead of just saying, you know, what will I look at today? Just randomly, haphazardly doing the dartboard, you know, throwing a dart on the wall kind of a thing. That's going to keep you from it. But if you know exactly what it is you're going to do, you know where you're going to be, you can anticipate, and that streamlines some of the things that you're doing. I think that's very helpful. Well, I'll just pause and let these guys go over that.
Bill?
I'm supposing that when it comes to your devotional lives, the bulk of you are probably daily Bible readers. Maybe you have a plan, maybe you use the Bible app or something like that. I'm not going to ask who is or anything, but if you miss a day, how do you feel? Feel like you failed? It's not about rigidity, it's about regularity. In other words, if a day transpires and you feel like you haven't been as engaged as you should, just understand you can pick up where you are and start again. Don't let your devotional life become merely a duty, something that you have to do, all the boxes have to be checked. But make it a delight. See it as a time where, in the spirit of Psalm 46 and verse 10, be still and know that I am God, you can push the pause button. And so I would definitely, in a busy age, keep that in mind and not let your setbacks and your imperfections and frailty serve as a hindrance to continuing. Because you read Genesis and Exodus, you get to Leviticus, and you think, man, I got to get out of Leviticus. Before you know it, you're not reading like you should, and you're not as excited maybe. And I'll say this, Leviticus is not the greatest read, but it is an awesome study, and there's a difference. So I would urge you not to be too hard on yourself if you find that maybe you've taken a misstep or if it's gotten away from you. You can simply start again. You know, Christianity is about the land of beginning again. And our devotional lives, I think, need to be viewed that way. And as a preacher, Brother Bart mentioned about, putting lessons together in Bible classes. I try to make that a devotional experience, but I find it becomes quite academic. And for me, I have to have those moments where it's not about a sermon. It's about just meditation, reflection, examination, considering where am I? How's my walk with the Lord? How am I behaving myself as a husband and a friend and a Christian? We don't want it just to be academic. we want it to be is it's been reinforced, an intimate means of drawing near to our God, trusting, as James says in James 4:7-8, He'll draw closer to us.
I think if we're concerned about being too busy, and I think I'm pretty busy, probably too busy at times, the first thing I would suggest, you gotta cut something out. That's first thing, because there is a such thing as being too busy. And we have a disadvantage that our ancestors didn't have. Screens. We spend so much time probably, on television, and this thing will alert me if I spend more than a certain amount of time with this thing on. It's embarrassing how much time we spend looking at screens. And I'm sending emails and doing stuff, but listen, I don't have to have it. If you find you don't have time to pray and to read and to sing and to think about Christ on the cross, you're not doing life right. And I think we all find ourselves in positions like that. And so I'm suggesting to you, give yourself a limit. I didn't say the phone is evil. I just said give yourself a limit as to how much time you're going to spend on it each day. And you'll probably find you have a lot more time than you need if you could just limit the screen time. That's first thing. The second thing is probably just my personality. I'm like ruthless about efficiency because I'm busy and I got to get things done. I just have a real aversion to like wasting time. I can do a lot of devotional things while I'm doing other things. When I lived in DC, I used to take the train to work because it was too stressful to drive. And so I took the train. And so, every day, 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes on the way home, I'd be on the train. I got the best Bible reading in my life done on the train. I'm surrounded by a mass of humanity, and all I could see was this Bible for 30 minutes, uninterrupted in the morning and in the evening. That was me making use of the time. I got to be on the train anyway, and I got an hour of Bible reading in completely uninterrupted every day. It was fantastic. You're going to shower every day. You could listen to the Bible while you shower. How about this? You could sing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. I'm not a good singer, but I sing anyway. My wife has to hear it. And I'm saying I'm going to do this anyway. I'm making the most of this time. It's me and the Lord, and I'm singing praises and hymns and spiritual songs. It doesn't cost me any extra time at all. There's just a lot of things that I find like that where I'm not making more time. I'm just being efficient with the time that I have. And I think if you're just careful and you think about it, you say, I don't have enough time. You do. You drive to work every day. You could listen to the Bible. You could listen to 2 sermons every single day if you wanted to, instead of listening to the radio and whatever other stuff you're listening to. I mean, the time is there. We just have to be efficient about how we use it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, Bart, you said something, I don't know if you meant this way, but I thought it was great. Sometimes we think about Bible reading, I'll just give you credit, okay? We think about Bible reading, we say, I've got a plan for the year. But Bart said, what are the passages I'm going to read this week? And I think if you can sometimes break Bible study down in those bite-sized chunks, you say, I'm going to read the Bible through for a year, you get stopped in Leviticus, Bill, and then you're like, well, I just give up till next year. But if you said, hey, I'm going to think about weekly plans, that's just a different way of going about it. Bill talked about being merciful to ourselves, and sometimes we may miss, and that doesn't mean you have any less of God's love, and you don't get any more when you do the spiritual disciplines, by the way. The spiritual disciplines in devotional life isn't a way to get God's love, it's a way to experience and enjoy it. And so God doesn't love you more because you read the Bible, you just come to realize and appreciate it more. And Melvin talked about don't talk to him when he's on the train, pretty much, right? No, but redeeming the time. There's all kind of flexible things we can do, and maybe we're thinking, okay, I'm going to be able to get this uninterrupted time to work my way through Ezekiel uninterrupted. But if you can just redeem the time when you're walking your dog, when you're exercising, to pray and do those things, you'll benefit, and you still will be able to do the things that you're already doing. All right, Bill, we'll just start back with you. And again, this is a personal question, as a lot of these have been. And how is your devotional life, this is for all of you, how has your devotional life changed over the years? And when I say changed, maybe even think about some specific things. I used to go about it this way, this worked, this didn't. or I find myself doing more of this than that. Over the years for you personally, how has your own devotional life changed and evolved? Because we're always growing and changing in a lot of different ways. And yeah, what have you done that's worked and how has it changed over time?
I'd like to say this just out of the chute here. I am my happiest, my most joyful, most content, most at peace when my devotional life is running on all cylinders. I can't say that it always is, but it's like a high I keep chasing. And sometimes I get a hold of it, but then the cares and the riches and the pleasures of this world might get the best of me for a while, but again, it's about regularity, not rigidity. I try to get back. I know what it means, how important it is. And I tell the guys at the school of preaching, I say, your success as a preacher is going to be based a lot on your devotional life. If you're spending time with God, if you meet Him early and often, if you pray consistently, you'll go a lot farther in so many areas of life, and it will protect you from apostasy, because anybody that's had anything to do with schools of preaching know that so many guys go through, and in about 5 or 6 years they're not faithful anymore. It's not that they just stop preaching, they stop serving the Lord. When Jesus becomes your very best friend, it's hard to turn your back on your best friend. Doesn't matter what the church does to you, or your friends do to you, or something that happens. So devotional living has always been very important to me. Now, the older I've got, the more important it has become. I've often said if I would have known what I know now when I was 20, I could have taken over the world. But I didn't know it at 20. I'm, too fast old, too slow smart. But I wish I would have spent much more time in a structured way trying to put the Bible to memory. I've tried to do a lot of that through the years, but I think of how much time I wasted that I could have used. And so now, as an older Christian, there's a sense of urgency for my own sake. Not that I can earn my salvation through it, but there's a sense of urgency that while I'm here, I want to draw as close to God as I can, to ready myself for the world to come. And that takes a lot of determined effort and thinking about it. I wish when I was younger, like I said, I would have memorized Scripture more. I wish when I was younger, I would have read through the Bible more. But here I am at 27 years old. Here I am at 57 years old, and if there is a regret, I wish I would have spent more time. You ask, how has it changed? The urgency of it has become greater for me. And now those things that I knew I should have been doing when I was 27, and I sought to do it, but now it means everything to me, more so than it did. Maybe it just takes getting older to see that for what it really is. I'm so thankful for all the technology that's out there that makes it possible to listen to podcasts that are spiritually based, to listen to the Bible, to listen to good sermons. I fall asleep at night listening to sermons. Not because the preachers are boring necessarily. I'd listen to my own sermons if I wanted to just fall asleep. But it's nice to fall asleep listening to either Romans 8 over and over and over again, or whatever it is. It means just so much more, because now it's about, heaven is a lot closer than it used to be. Or at least, So I want to spend as much time as I can with the one I'm going to spend eternity with. I don't know if I answered that very well, but I'm sorry.
Neville, what would you say about what's changed?
This is probably related to the busyness thing. I mean, when I first became a Christian, I wasn't married and I didn't have children. It was me and the Lord every day, and that was one thing. Of course, when you get married, now I'm trying to incorporate my wife, and I want to make sure that I'm praying with her and reading with her. And then you start having kids, and now, these are all great things, but it makes it so that I feel like I have less time for just me and the Lord. Then you're preaching, so you got a congregation of people that you're trying to look after and take care of. I've got, students, 150 students a semester or something, and so I'm trying to minister to them. So I'm just saying that I find it's more difficult for me to get large swaths of time for it to just be me and the Lord. And so whereas I used to feel like I could do that every day for like hours, now I have to maybe get away for a day or two. And so we started when we were having kids and stuff. I'm trying very hard to make sure my wife doesn't feel like a single mother, because I'm off doing stuff all day long, and then I come home, I gotta, instead of disappearing into my office to get my 2 hours of reading or whatever, take care of the kids. Now, I just might have to look at her and say, listen, I think I'm gonna need like a day and a half. And if I had to, I could just go to a hotel room or something and literally just to read my Bible and to think and reflect. But I don't have to go to a hotel room to do that. But that's very different. Like, I feel like every day I'm kind of fighting for time, and now I just maybe would have to take time away. And my wife can do the same, but that's just different, and that's because I got a family of people, and I got a church of people, and I got a bunch of students who are always kind of pulling onto my time. That wasn't the case before. So that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Bart?
Well, both these guys have said things that speak to me. Bill, I never know how to take it when someone says they fall asleep at night listening to my sermons. Well, I've been told that. Fell asleep listening to you last night. That's tough. But anyway, and Melvin, I can remember whenever Laura and I first got married, we were just little kids, and we didn't have kids, and I remember wishing the phone would ring and we could be busy. And now I think I wish the phone would quit ringing and we're too busy. And so that idea of things have changed, but we have to continue to make that the priority. I love what you said about the combination between these two words here. Be merciful to yourself when things have not gone the way you wanted them to, but be ruthless with your time and be serious about it. And I think those two things do marry well. Be serious about it. Make a schedule. And Laura and I have to reprioritize. We go through times where, okay, we get things set, we like where we are, and then a season of life goes by and we're like, wow, we're so busy, we got to reset again. And then go through, we had that conversation today about resetting again and prioritizing again and cutting out the things that can be cut out. So for us, that's an ongoing process of continuing to be merciful to ourselves while trying to be ruthless with our time and giving that time in a righteous, glorified way to the Lord. But Hiram, I don't think I'm answering your question at all, but I just enjoyed what these guys. I just enjoyed what they said, and it made me want to just talk about those things. But utilizing the gifts we've been given, because the technology can be a curse, like Melvin has already said, but it can also be something that is utilized to capitalize on time and pull up that podcast and pull up that sermon and do those things anywhere we are. It's a great blessing if we use it as a blessing. Yeah.
So our thoughts behind this whole panel discussion was to try to make things practical for people, and all of these guys talked about the changes in their life, and you've got to change your devotional life. I think you see this in the life of Jesus. Early in his ministry, there's 40 days of fasting and all of that. As Jesus gets closer to the cross, there's a lot less miracle working. The prayer in Gethsemane is different from his prayers, Mark 1:35, early in the morning. And so we want to be close to God, but our devotional life has to mature and has to be flexible with where God puts us in our station in life. I think you see it with Paul at the end of his life and wanting books to study and to do things he couldn't do when he was traveling throughout the Roman Empire and doing that sort of thing. So be merciful to yourself, but realize your devotional life is going to change as your seasons in life change, as your home dynamics change and all that. We got 2 minutes left, and if y'all could just give me a quick answer on this, we may have time for one more, but maybe not, okay? What advice would you give to somebody who has never had a consistent devotional life but wants to start now? Always been on again, off again. They want to start now. What's one piece of advice that you would give to them? We're going to go Bart, Melvin, and then Bill.
I would just say super quick, once you do it, like I said before, once you do it and you see the power, the value, I think it'll stick. It's so beneficial. It's so affirming and like changing. I think once you actually do it, you prioritize it and you do it, you won't stop. You'll continue to find ways to do it because you'll find such value in it. And so I say, stop making excuses and do it. And there comes a time where you have to redeem the time, make use of the time, and this is a thing to do.
Yeah, I'd say start and then build progressively. You know, don't overwhelm yourself by trying to do everything at one time. Let me work on this for the next 30 days. Let me work on this thing. Reading my Bible every morning. Let me do that. And then I can add something else and add something else. Be progressive. Otherwise, this is how it is with most goals. You overwhelm yourself and you wind up doing nothing. So, you know, be reasonable with yourself as you begin.
Yeah.
My thoughts are a lot like Brother Melvin's. How do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time. And just try to urge people, just start tomorrow. Just say, I'll read 15 minutes. And then the old taste and see that the Lord is good. You may find yourself at the table a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
So just start small and let the momentum build, and you'll very well find out that you'll spend a lot more time and be more diligent in the process than you were before.
Well, we don't have time for one more question. Even though they did talk fast, they did their part. We do appreciate you being in this session. And if you haven't started a devotional life yet that's consistent, I do want to say you started well by coming to Equip this weekend and in your local congregation. We do need to be careful, just as we end with 20 seconds left. When we talk about devotional life, that's not divorced from the local church. It is devotional to worship with God's people. For centuries, that's the only kind of Bible intake that people had. So if you come to worship service as a serious and devoted student and learn from the sermons and the singing and the prayers, it will build your devotional life and you'll launch out from there and do great things. There are other sessions that will be taking place at the top of the hour at 11 o'clock. See the schedule for that. There's a youth session, a ladies class. There'll be continuing studies on Isaiah in the auditorium. Thank you for being in this session, and we'll close with a word of prayer.